everybody. My name is Liz. I'm from the United States. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Unfortunately, it's just how I was born. I'm really into your Prime Minister, though. He's pretty cool. So way to go on that one. I mean, look at him with those pandas. Jeez. It's so great. Anyway, I live and work in Portland, Oregon, at a company called Tilda. I work on our product Skylight, which is a Rails profiler. So that basically means we have an app that helps Rails apps be better Rails apps. So I'm here to talk to you today about two programming languages, Ruby and Rust. You heard some about Rust earlier. And how I built basically the same text-based adventure game twice. Once with Ruby, once with Rust. So why Ruby? Why Rust? Why anything? So Ruby and Rust are pretty different, but they're both pretty cool. I had a few false starts over the years trying to learn how to program, but Ruby was the first language I was able to really get into. If you don't already know anything about it, Ruby was designed around the idea of programmer happiness. It's very expressive and easy to learn. It's very similar to written English. So as you can see here, writing something like 10 times do puts Ruby is great will print Ruby is great to the console 10 times. You can read it almost like a sentence. So it's a very popular first language for people who are first getting into programming. You don't have to think too hard about what's happening under the hood to get started and make things work, even if you don't know very much about programming yet. So one of the first things I made when I first started learning to code was a text-based adventure game. I've written a few really little ones over the years, usually when I'm trying to learn a new language or playing with a new idea. Some of you might never have played one, but it's basically a game where everything is text. In my case, the whole game is played in your terminal like it's the 80s. So the way it works is you get a prompt, usually a sentence or two, followed by a question like, you are in a dark forest. You see a light in the north. You have a map. What do you do? And then you type something like, look at map. And the computer responds with something else. And you type something else. And then the computer responds to that, and so on and so forth, until your character dies, or the game is over. I think nowadays games like this are also called interactive fiction. So I'm going to try to take a quick look at the actual game I wrote to show you what it looks like. Let's see if I can. Is this going to work? Can I move this somewhere? No. Okay. This will take up the 3 bonus minutes that I had. There we go. Okay. So this is the Ruby side of the game. And it's open source and it's online, so you can check it out later if you want. So it starts out with a bunch of nonsense. And then it says, what is your name? And I'm going to say, Liz. What would you like to do? And then I'm going to say, look around. And it's going to say, this room contains a rare and glorious unicorn. It's amazing. This room contains a jar of unicorn farts. Unicorn Doctor is here too. What now? And I'm going to say, pick up a jar of unicorn farts. A jar of unicorn farts has been added to your inventory. Well, what now? Obviously, use a jar of unicorn farts. Boom! Unicorn farts are powerful. You are now very sparkly. A jar of unicorn farts has been removed from your inventory. So you get the idea. Let's see now. Whoops. Uh-oh, I think I might have screwed everything up by making it not mirroring. Oh well. Let's go back here. Is this gonna work? Oh no, I don't have my notes anymore. I screwed everything up. I don't know what to do. Gather windows? I don't know.
In the window behind it.
Oh. Wait, no, I lost it. Sorry. There's this guy. Okay. Unmirror. Thank you. Oh my gosh. This happens to me every time. You think I'd learn? Anyway, it's made sense that when I wanted to learn Rust, I'd build yet another text-based adventure game. So what is Rust and why did I want to learn about it in the first place? I realized actually I already talked a lot about Rust. but I'm here to talk about it some more. I might repeat some things, sorry. Yeah. So about a year ago, I decided I wanted to start learning a lower level language. I remember when it actually went like this. So something more close to the metal, so to speak, that didn't abstract away as much as Ruby does. I wanted to understand more about what goes on under the hood when I'm trying to talk to my computer. Fortunately, at that time, I had just started working at Tilda, where I get to work with Yehuda Katz, who is on the Rust core team, like some people here, which means if anyone's going to know about Rust, it's going to be that guy. And I see him every day, so perfect. At least part of our product Skylight is written in Rust. Again, perfect sense for me to learn it. I also knew that it was a newer language that was being actively developed. I really wanted to get into open source at the time. I'm into it now, so I don't have to want it anymore. I'm really interested in how programming languages work, so it seemed like the perfect thing to get into. And I mean, I love Ruby, but the whole ecosystem was pretty much all set by the time I got to it. But Rust, on the other hand, Rust was still new, so it was very exciting, and it's changing all the time, and I wanted to learn all about it. So I decided to build basically the same game, one version with Ruby and one version with Rust, so I could more easily compare and contrast the pros and cons of each language. But also so I could build my confidence a bit, building one piece of the game using a language I was pretty comfortable with, and then implementing the same or similar feature in a new language that I was still learning, and on until I had something that worked. So before writing a single line of code, I had to think about the architecture of the game, and there were a million different ways I could find to structure it. In the end, I wanted something extremely simple, the most basic thing I could think of, so I went with a very basic loop. It continues to ask what the player wants to do until a particular condition is met, at which point the game ends. So in this example, which I stress is not real code, it's just an example of the structure I was using. We start by defining playing as true, and while playing is true, the game asks, what do you want to do next? It then parses whatever the user input is, and it performs an action based on that input. Like if the user says move north, then the player's position is changed, and maybe we output something like you have moved north. We don't exit the loop unless the user dies or the game ends, at which point playing is redefined as false. So what does this look like in Ruby or Rust? So in Ruby, there's a lot going on before we get to this play method, but that's where the loop is, so that's what I'm showing you. This is a method on the game class, which is initialized with a player, a map, an array of rooms that I've already created, with the value of playing as true. So as long as playing remains true, the game will keep asking, what now? And then parse whatever the user types and respond to that. So you can pretty much see, literally what's happening. So this example, the Rust example, is ignoring a lot of other code I wrote to support this, much like the Ruby example, but for the sake of simplicity here, you can see that we're creating a player, a map, and a game. And you can see that while game.playing, game play. Pretty close to what I illustrated earlier. What you can't see, though, is that unlike Ruby, I had to write my own new method, because Rust doesn't automatically give you anything like Ruby's initialized, which I guess I was pretty spoiled by. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to the Ruby version. At first glance, both implementations of a similar idea look pretty similar. However, there's a lot of code I'm not showing you just because there's so much of it, and we don't have a lot of time. So what I'd like to focus on instead is the experience of writing it. You can look at all the real code on GitHub after the talk if you want to see the whole thing. Don't worry, I'll give you a link. I think I only have a minute left, which is sad. So with Ruby, I felt like I could write whatever I wanted, make something work quickly, and then reorganize the code as I went. Oh, okay, great. I set a timer, so great. It's really easy to have a flow, like you're just writing your ideas down in your journal and making things up as you go along. The downside of this is that it's really easy to get caught up in the flow and forget to check things out as you go. You can forget to test, forget to run every single part of the program you just wrote, which is what happened to me. So I periodically run the Ruby program, things would just break. In this example, use vial of unicorn blood. Undefined method effects for array, no method error. Like, whoa, no. So without adding a whole bunch of tests after the fact, which isn't great anyway, I didn't have a lot of confidence that something wouldn't unexpectedly fall apart while I was running it. All because I got caught up writing it and I forgot to check things out as I went along. Rust, on the other hand, is kind of the reverse experience. since Rust needs to be compiled before you run it, the compiler literally won't let you run the program until you fix all the stuff it doesn't like. That is my timer. Okay, so not coincidentally, I have not run into any of those pesky random bugs in the Rust version of the game. And to show you this, I had to actually like put one in there just to show you what an error looks like. But anyway, because the compiler caught them before they would have become a problem. Which is super frustrating when you're first learning Rust, because it can be really satisfying to just see something work. And then you'll be working for hours and seeing errors just like over and over and over. And it can be really disheartening if you're new to it. But once you do it, it's like it just works, and it's great. So the best way I can think to compare Ruby and Rust in terms of my experience is like they're two different parenting styles. This might seem like an odd comparison, but bear with me. Ruby is like hippie parents who let their kids do whatever they want, and they don't put a whole lot of restrictions on them because they know you'll figure it out. But the downside is that the kids will hit all these bumps in the road along the way, and it's nothing wrong with that, just no one ever told them they shouldn't do certain things. But Rust is like the parents who are constantly telling their kids what's best for them. It's a little bit strict, but not bad. It's just they're always giving you this unsolicited advice, and you're like, God, shut up. But it turns out they're right, like 99% of the time, so you're like, ugh, fine. Anyway, so just like parents, you can't say one way is better than the other. They both have their pros and cons, depending on what you're trying to do and how you prefer to work. I'm sure someone with more experience can give a more in-depth analysis. This is my opinion. So if you're thinking of learning Rust or Ruby, or both, I say go for it. This is the repo for the game. There's instructions in the README about how to set it up. Neither of them have like a real story. They're all like, you know, walk into a room, it's like the dank meme room, and, you know, Hillary Clinton is here, or whatever. Anyway, so there's a bunch of like weird placeholder stuff. And I am seeking contributions if anyone is interested. There's like no tests. So if anyone knows about testing in Rust and wants to help me out, like, please hook me up. Anyway, if you want to talk about any of this, I'll be around today and tomorrow. Otherwise, you can talk to me on Twitter at that thing. And thank you very much.